Chapter 23. Why is he so late? Jogul looked around nervously. Dawn approached as the sun was rising in the distance, but there was still no sign of Chongmyung's return. If Chongmyung didn't make it before the morning, the elders would discover his disappearance, and then there would be a riot. The disciples of Mount Hua are forbidden from leaving without permission. What if they find out that Chongmyung snuck out while wearing a suspicious full-body black outfit? It'll be hell. He hoped that he would never have to see that. Calm down. But Sahyung. Yunjong shook his head. He isn't that stupid. He'll be back before it's too late, as long as there was no accident. And no matter how much he thought, it didn't seem like anything could happen to that monster. At worst, he would be a little late. Still, doesn't he know that people are waiting here for him? Right. If it's him. As soon as Jogul voiced his concerns, the door swung open. Ch! Jogul and Yunjong swiftly turned around. Saje! Chongmyung, carrying his cloth mask in one hand, began to take off his mysterious clothing as soon as he closed the door, quickly changing into Mount Hua's uniform. Nothing happened, right? That's what I was going to ask. Did anything happen? What would happen? I was treated well, and even treated others well too. Who? What was his name? You... Whatever. It was the fabric shop owner. Eh? Jogul and Yunjong were shocked at his words. Seeing their reaction, Chongmyung remembered what had happened a while back. It wasn't funny, seriously. Yujong-san, who mistakenly believed Chongmyung came from the Jongnam sect to clean up the remnants of Mount Hua, willingly released all the information he had. He was trying his best to leave a good impression and gain favor. It was good that everything worked out so easily, but at the same time, he felt bitter. Although it was no longer among the great sects, Mount Hua still had a formidable history, yet Yujong-san clearly held no regard for it. Even after witnessing Chongmyung's sword arts, Mount Hua's name never so much crossed his mind. Regardless of whether the plum blossom sword technique was lost in recent years, it was still iconic as a symbol of Mount Hua. But he lived in Hwaum all his life and couldn't recognize it? Considering Mount Hua's recent history, no one could even remember it. However, the bitterness in his heart didn't go away. Well, something bitter will always remain bitter, and it helps me see things clearly. He was glad that he didn't expose his identity. What happened? At Jogul's question, Chongmyung clicked his tongue. It isn't something for kids to know. You're a kid too. Yeah, just go gather everyone. We need to train. Today too? Chongmyung rolled his eyes. Listen, Sahyung. Yes? Whether it's pouring rain, freezing snow, or violent winds, starting today, we won't miss a single day of training. Heavy snow or cold winds, we will not rest for a single day, even if Mount Hua collapses around us. Jogul nodded with a stiff face. He's decided. After all, it was his decision to follow and help Chongmyung, right? If he can get strong through training, then he would do it. Truthfully, training without rest was what he was hoping for. We'll gather everyone. Then you will... Oh, I won't be coming. Huh? Chongmyung looked at Yunjong and continued. You know how to train, right? Yes? Then do it right. Then you... I have other work to do. Yunjong sighed as Chongmyung waved his hand. Okay. Today we will go and practice ourselves, but you're only exempt for today. Yunjong had a slightly serious face. Don't forget that this training is possible because of you. If you don't plan to end it halfway, then you need to set the example and join in. I get it. The third-class disciples of the White Blossom dorms were training without complaint due to their fear of Chongmyung. Even though Yunjong was the great Sahyung, there was a limit to what he could do if Chongmyung was absent. Sure. Chongmyung laid flat on the bed as the two left the room. Now what do I do? His head pounded and ached. He was dumbfounded. It wouldn't be difficult to merely wipe out the enemies, but anyone who learned about it would naturally link it to Mount Hua. If it was only Chongmyung's reputation at stake, then there would be no reason to hesitate. But he was a disciple of Mount Hua, and if he tried anything, people would say it was impossible for a kid like Chongmyung to act alone. The sect would receive all the blame, and it would carry the crime of forcing children to carry out unspeakable acts. Chongmyung wanted a better result than that. He needed justification. Reason. A reason. Chomyoung tore at his hair in frustration. Does any of this make sense? Damn it! All those businesses belonged to Mount Hua, but now they were trying to make Mount Hua pay them? His stomach was boiling in rage. He had to prove that the businesses belonged to Mount Hua, and the merchants tried to steal them away by manipulating the ledgers. In that case, what about the 100,000 yang? It could be paid back. No, Mount Hua wouldn't even have to pay because every nyang originally belonged to them anyway. They were the owners who made and used the money. Who would ask them to pay? So all he would have to do was prove that the businesses belonged to Mount Hua. Then everything will be resolved. If only it was that easy, I wouldn't be here. If Mount Hua still had its business ledgers, there would be no suffering now. If there was evidence, someone would have found it. The disciples of Mount Hua aren't fools. Rather, they're quite smart. Looking at the situation, when the demonic sect attacked, the ledgers and everything must have been destroyed. Is this also because of me? It hurts. His stomach hurt. Chomyoung rolled over in his bed. No, Sayoung would always keep the most important things in a safe place. Safely. Money and ledgers. A place. Huh? Chomyoung jumped up from his bed. Place. Place. Could it be? Would Sayoung ever keep his books in a place that could be easily targeted? Come on, try to remember. Chomyoung wasn't really interested in his Sayoung's matters. He knew that money was needed to run a clan, but he thought that a warrior shouldn't be attached to such things. But seeing these kids in Mount Hua struggling to survive, he felt bad thinking of how he'd behave in his past life. Since Chomyoung wasn't interested in such a matter, his Sayoung had never shown him any books. In fact, whenever he was organizing, he would often ask Chomyoung to leave before he began. Leave? Hazy memories began to resurface. At most, there were no more than 3 ledgers in Sayoung's room. There must have been dozens of ledgers for a sect the size of Mount Hua. So where were the others stored? They're somewhere else. There was no place to store it in Sayoung's room. Although he was the great elder and sect leader, his room was strangely empty. Chomyoung remembered that there was no shelf to even keep books. Besides, he would keep the books in a box, and there were only 3 held in that room. So where were the other ledgers? Then is it true? The rumors was that there was a secret warehouse that only the sect leaders knew about. It was a famous rumor. Normally, Chomyoung would have investigated that rumor to know the truth, but he didn't check it because he had no interest in it. Wait, maybe. Mount Hua used to be a prestigious sect in Shaanxi, and sometimes strange things would arrive at the door. For example, forbidden martial arts which none should learn, or secrets that only the sect leaders know. Occasionally, legendary swords and treasures were obtained. So where did they all go? If those items were here, Chomyoung wouldn't have overlooked them, and they weren't sold. Some things in the sect could cause a storm if released. If the current sect leader sold them, then word would have spread widely. Then what? There must be a secret warehouse where books and treasures are stored. It can't be far from here. The warehouse wouldn't be placed in the open, so it had to be in Mount Hua, a warehouse which no one knew about. But could that be possible? How would you build a secret warehouse in a sect where martial artists swarm all over like ants? Chomyoung slammed the door and stormed out. There could only be one place. First, the entrance had to be near the sect leader's residence. If the entrance was outside, it couldn't go unnoticed. No one could enter without the permission of the sect leader, so it had to be there. The residence of the sect leader hasn't changed from the past at all. Then is that it? Chomyoung, who ran outside, opened his eyes wide. There was a gentle ridge behind the residence of the sect leader. If a warehouse had been built, it would have stood out in the eyes of the people. However, there is one way to avoid the eyes of others: an underground warehouse. If they had dug out an underground warehouse near the living quarters, martial artists with keen senses could have discovered it. However, what if they had made a passage starting here and built the warehouse under the mountain? No one would know of it other than a ghost. Chomyoung smiled. Right. When he thought about it, it was strange. Usually, in other sects, the sect leader would live in the most central area. Wouldn't it be strange if the emperor's palace was placed in a corner? However, the residence of the sect leader of Mount Hua was in such a place, and there is nothing after that. That's all there is. Seeing the small garden behind the sect leader's residence, Jongnam grinned. It looks like this treasure hunt won't be too complicated. He felt as if he could see his Sahyong biting his lip and clenching his fist from the afterlife. Please understand, my dear Sahyong. Shouldn't our top priority be saving Mount Hua? If possible, I'll hand this treasure over to the current sect leader without touching it. Of course, that was only after he got what he needed. If it makes you sad or angry, then come back to life. Jongnam smiled triumphantly.